My mother's mother,
Mm-hmm.
so my grandmother on my mother's side, was actually born here. She was born in 1907 in Gardena. She's really at the earliest, I think, end of the Nisei generation, because most, Nisei were born after that. So, but I identify as Sansei. The grandfather was Issei, and my parents generally are Nisei, so that's how I. On my mother's side, I know my grandfather's family is from Fukuoka,
Mm-hmm.
and on my father's side, I know that I think his father's family is from Wakayama. I really encourage people to write,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't take $1 million and a huge camera crew and everything to write something.
That's right.
Very easy. Usually the only thing that's stopping people is just themselves. And every project starts with that. So, if you don't start it, then it will never get done. And along those lines, talking to your parents and your grandparents and putting yourself on the page and your own family, your own community, the more personal you make a project, the more unique it's going to be. And what happens, though, is then the more universal it becomes, because the more human your story is, the more people can identify with it. And that's really what Hollywood wants. Mm-hmm. That's what, everyone wants, is a good story. So the best way to make it good and unique is to be honest about yourself, and they always say to write what you know, and who do you know better than yourself? So, all those things kind of fall into, don't be afraid to sort of represent yourself and your own family, your own friends, your own community on screen. It's not about, who's the next Shia LaBeouf. It's about who's got the most interesting, unique story. And you only know that by doing it. So, I really encourage that. Just this last month, I was in an AFI film that was directed by a Japanese and produced by a Japanese, and who are from Japan, but they're studying here to be filmmakers. And it happened to be that the film was actually about the Japanese-American experience, because it was about a story of two half-Japanese children during the war in an internment camp. So of course, I was very happy to work on that film. I only acted in it; I didn't do anything else. But it was a very interesting role, and it was good filmmakers and a great story. I think I can't speak for all of them, but I would assume, and I do believe, most of the Asian American actors here are very happy to work with, student filmmakers, Asian filmmakers, to help them with their early career. Mm-hmm. In part, it's because you hope they're going to make it big and they'll give you a paying job. But, I joke about that. Really, it's about helping the next generation, because they're the ones that are continuing to tell our story. Mm-hmm. The other actor that was in this film with me, it's called Half Kenneth. The director, his name is Ken Ochiai. The other actor that was in it with me was Sab Shimono, who's been around for, he's done even, a great body of work. He's been on Broadway. He's started, films and on television, and he was happy to do the film. It's for no actor, it's never really about the money. It's about the work. It's about, what is the script about? What is this role about? What do I do as an artist? And most of us understand, just from having been in this industry and fighting for it, and because of our own experience, dealing with our own identity, how important it is for our stories to be told on screen. Actually, I don't know if I can describe it, because it's so wild and crazy, and it's such a sort of dream come true when it happens. It's there's so much going on. It's just nuts. But I also was trying to be very conscious of it because I knew how important it was. I mean, when I was sort of in the earlier part of my career and still thinking about, you know, what films I would make, and I knew that people like Stephen Okazaki, who is Sansei, who won an Oscar, I think in 1990 for a film, that documentary film he made called Days of Waiting, about the internment camps. I knew that he was a huge inspiration for me, and that he made me very proud as a Japanese American, and that that it had that kind of meaning for me, and that may be the same, you know, that I may have that kind of impact on other younger filmmakers and actors. Plus, it's just such a major award, and it meant so much for the film that we made and sort of acceptance of a lot of things. So I was trying to be very conscious of it. What I'm most happy about is that my parents could be a part of the whole party. They went to the Oscars. They were in our limo when we drove to the Oscars. They actually sat in better seats than I had, because just through connections that my dad has as a judge and just being in Los Angeles for years, he managed to get some really prime seats right in the center of the orchestra section. So it was great, you know, to be able to, after receiving it, and then when we're sitting back down during commercial break, go over to them and let them hold it, and that was the best part. But mainly it was the recognition for the film. It wasn't, because the project was never about me as a filmmaker. It was about telling Sugihara's story. It was about sharing that untold part of, you know, Japanese person, and the response that we were getting because of that. So to be rewarded for that, or for that film, that story, to get the sort of award, meant a lot. I can't say it's based on anything in reality, because of course, although I've met a couple of Sugihara's sons and his wife, of course I didn't know him because he had passed away in the mid-'80s. But there was definitely directorial choices about how much physical affection he would show. On the one hand, of course, he is a Japanese man of a certain generation, which is the same generation as my grandfather. And again, this is sort of, I used knowledge of my grandfather incorporating how, you know, Sugihara would be performed, portrayed. Because I do know, you know, Japanese men do behave a certain way. There's not a lot of show of emotion. On the other hand, I do want to show Sugihara as being very unusual. He was not a very typical Japanese. He spoke 6 languages. He knew, this is just from what I've read of him, he knew from a fairly early age that he wanted to study languages because he wanted to live abroad. He wanted to live and work in Europe. He was very interested in working for the foreign ministry. He was very interested in things that were outside of traditional Japanese culture. He was Greek Orthodox was his religion. He in fact married a Russian woman in China in the mid-30s. I mean, just so many things about him were unusual for a Japanese person.